Dostoyevsky and Elijah the Prophet by Robert Mann. No one taught you that Raskolnikov confesses on Elijah's Day, a major holiday in pre-revolutionary Russia. On this holiday, up to 100,000 people would gather near the Church of Elijah, which was built beside the gunpowder factory to protect it from explosions. Elijah was believed to control rain, fire, and lightning, a provenance that he inherited from the Slavic thunder god Perun when ancient Rus transitioned to the Christian faith. When more rain was needed for crops, people turned to Elijah. When there was too much rain, again they appealed to Elijah. In some communities, Elijah had two hypostases and even two churches: wet Elijah, needed in times of drought, and dry Elijah, who could stop excessive rain. As a harbinger of the last judgment, he was seen as fierce, fiery, and ominous, but at the same time he was the generous provider of rain and abundance. All rain, thunder, and lightning came from Elijah. Even in the early 20th century, Russian folk would make the sign of the cross at the sound of thunder. The rumbling was attributed to Elijah's chariot as it lumbered across the storm clouds. And a thunderstorm was always expected on Elijah's Day, July 20th on the old calendar, August 2nd on the new. How do we know that Raskolnikov confesses on Elijah's Day? It really makes little difference whether the spectacular thunderstorm that is the prelude to his confession is precisely the Elijah's Day storm that was expected each year, or just another one of Elijah's rainstorms. However, we can say with confidence that it is the proverbial storm of Elijah's Day, July 20th, that soaks and batters Raskolnikov as he wanders around the city all night in spiritual torment. The first words of the novel are, "in the beginning of July." One can assume, therefore, that the action begins sometime in the first week of the month. Although the story's chronology is not explicitly defined, it appears that around 14 days go by before the confession. This takes us to the period July 15th to the 22nd. For over 2 weeks there has been no rain in Petersburg. It is hot, humid, and unpleasant. And so, looming behind the storm is the traditional folkloric expectation of a storm on July 20th. It might not rain today, but surely there will be rain on Elijah's Day. In addition, it is a very special thunderstorm, a spectacular, torrential deluge with lightning that illuminates the sky for 5 seconds at a time. Ilya Petrovich, to whom Raskolnikov confesses, is a reflection of Elijah as he is perceived in popular belief. His name is Elijah. He is fiery-tempered and is depicted with all sorts of imagery pertaining to thunder and lightning. He lets loose with all his thunderbolts at one visitor. His nickname is Gunpowder, which elicits associations with the boom of thunder and with the Church of Elijah at the gunpowder factory. In the water of Rishevka, just upstream from the church, you can still see the huge millstones that were used for grinding the powder's ingredients. Thus, beaten down by Elijah's storm, Raskolnikov confesses on Elijah's Day to a booming Elijah, who is an assistant superintendent in the police force, much as Elijah in folk belief functions as a sort of policeman at God's side, reminding mortals of their sins and judgment with his lightning. The imagery and symbolic filigree go far beyond the few details I have mentioned here. The discovery of the Elijah leitmotif in Dostoevsky's fiction is perhaps the most far-reaching of all textual discoveries in his works, although it has been completely ignored among Dostoevsky scholars. Significantly, the symbolism begins in his early works, written before his arrest and exile. The enigmatic novella, The Landlady, is virtually deciphered by the Elijah allusions. Its central mysterious figure, the gruff old Ilya Murin, is an earthly emanation of the fierce Elijah, not a demonic power as he is ordinarily seen by readers who aren't aware of Elijah's role in early Russian culture. And, as with Raskolnikov, Elijah is victorious in the end, the same Christian pattern that we find in Dostoevsky's later writing. The rebellious young freethinker returns to the flock. All of the storms that one finds in Dostoevsky's fiction were associated in the writer's mind with Elijah. I am always asked why Dostoevsky employed Elijah's symbolism so frequently. The answer lies in his overarching theme, his focus on conscience, judgment, and his belief in a uniquely Russian spirituality, the Russian soul. In order to portray that spirituality, he needed emblems of a specifically Russian Christianity. Jesus and Mary, as portrayed in the Bible, are universal figures in the Christian faith. There is nothing specifically Slavic about them. By the time he began his writing career, he settled on the Russian folkloric Elijah and all the beliefs pertaining to him as his chosen emblem of an exceptional Russian spirituality. The storms in The Eternal Husband, The Insulted and Injured, The Little Hero, The Brothers Karamazov, Mr. Prokhodshin, and other works all invoke the Russian folkloric Elijah. However, only in one work does the author lay bare the Elijah associations in an explicit fashion: the village of Stepanchikovo and its inhabitants. In this humorous Christian allegory of good and evil, the kind and magnanimous Yegor Ilyich Rostanev is a reflection of God and Elijah, while the nasty backbiter Foma Fomich Obiskin is a reflection of the devil. The denouncement comes precisely on Elijah's day, the name day of Rostanev's son Ilya, and it is during the Elijah's day storm that Rostanev finally ejects Foma from his home. As he contemplates his decision, he sits down in a corner and says he will now state his final word. There is a moment of silence, and then the most deafening of all thunder strikes overhead. The gathered visitors and spongers make the sign of the cross and exclaim, "Elijah the prophet!" The thunder is Rostanev's final word, so to speak, the word of Elijah, the voice of judgment. For scholars who know little about Russian folk tradition and have difficulty dealing with spiritual symbols and allegory, the climactic expulsion of Foma during the Elijah's day storm should be a wake-up call, a signal that Dostoevsky attached special value to Elijah as he is perceived in folk belief. The storm at the climax of Stepanchikovo is a precursor of the punishing storm of judgment that leads to Raskolnikov's confession. A thunderstorm also serves as the backdrop to the finale of The Insulted and Injured, which was published in the 7-year interim between Stepanchikovo and Crime and Punishment. The Brothers Karamazov is replete with evocations of Elijah. Various details and motifs link the dying boy, Ilyusha, his father, Snegiryov, and Pyotr Ilyich Perkotsin with Elijah. The conflict between Dmitri and his father can be compared with Ordenov and Raskolnikov's rebellion against God's order. And, once again, the climactic moment in the novel's action, that of Dmitri's arrest, comes on the backdrop of a rainstorm. In his desperate quest for money, Dmitri has just gone to Sukhoi Postyolok, dry village, led there by a priest from a church of Elijah, Ilinsky Batyushka, but the trip is only a hellish purgatory for Dmitri. The lumber dealer he finds there is drunk and unconscious, and Dmitri is nearly asphyxiated by a faulty flue as he tries to sleep. This, so to speak, is the punishing ordeal of dry Elijah. Soon he is arrested at Mokroye, wet village, as the rain comes down. On a spiritual, symbolic level, this is the retribution of wet Elijah. In the first draft of the novel, Dmitri is named Ilyinsky, after a real-life prototype whom the writer met in Omsk prison. Ilyinsky had been imprisoned for patricide and served 7 years, but was subsequently exonerated. Given the Elijah symbolism that Dostoevsky had already been using before his arrest, Ilyinsky's surname must have been an additional factor that played with the writer's imagination along with the horrific circumstances of the elder Ilinsky's murder. This blog piece, by necessity brief, is a tiny introduction to Dostoevsky's Elijah symbolism, which is examined in greater detail and depth in an ebook that I have published with Amazon called Dostoevsky, What They Don't Teach You in School. Related titles on paper are The Brothers Karamazov, An Unorthodox Guide, and The Landlady.